Hello and welcome to your art lesson. Today we're going to be creating an observational drawing of an eye. So an observational drawing, remember, is a drawing where you are drawing exactly what you see. So by the end of this lesson and next lesson when we'll finish this, hopefully you will have a drawing that looks fairly like this eye here, where you've got all the shapes and details and you've added a full range of tones that will make it look 3D. Okay, so on your sheet you've got lots of things to help you. You've got the photograph of the eye to work from, you've got a diagram of the anatomy of the eye so you can ensure that you include all of the different details on it. You've also got a step-by-step guide to how to draw an eye, but I'm going to show you how to do the first part, which is just to draw the outlines and the details. That's all I want you to do for today's lesson, because after that we're going to be spending some time practicing creating a range of tones and then graduating tones so that you can make it fade from dark to light. So the first stage of this lesson is just about making a line drawing of the eye as accurately as you can. So I'm going to start, just like on your step-by-step guide, by drawing the iris, which is the coloured part of the eye. And you can see that the iris is a perfect circle. So that's what I'm going to start by drawing. So, two things you should notice as I'm drawing. First of all, I'm holding my pencil quite a long way up, which allows me to have more movement when I'm working, and also stops me from pressing too hard. Second thing you should notice is that I'm not actually pressing too hard at the moment. I'm sketching out, finding my shape, correcting it as I go along, and then because I haven't pressed too hard with my pencil, I will be able to make changes at the end and rub out any lines I don't want. Okay, happy with my circle now for my iris. Next part I need to do is the pupil in the centre of the eye. So the pupil, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, depending on whether you're in bright light conditions or whether you're in a dark place. So if you're in a light place, the pupil will be really small. If you're in a dark place, the pupil will be much larger. And that's because the pupil is actually a hole that changes size to allow more or less light into the eye. So once again, the pupil is a fairly perfect circle, should be right in the centre of your iris. Again, spend a little bit of time correcting it to make sure that you've got a good circle. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. Okay, next thing I'm going to move on to is looking at the main outline of the eye here. Okay, now, very often we think that an eye looks like this. It doesn't. That's how you learn to draw an eye when you're quite small. What we're learning today is how to draw an eye much more accurately as it actually looks. Okay, so first thing I want you to notice is that if we look at this top eyelid here, you'll see that it covers part of the iris here. So you can't actually see the full circle. So that top eyelid, when you sketch it in, you need to make sure that it goes just slightly over the top of your iris. Okay, and that curves up and then down again. It's really helpful as well if you look at the shape of the white part of the eye, which is called the cornea, and draw that in so that you get things the correct proportion. So proportions are about the size of different parts of an artwork in relation to one another. So here I'm looking at the proportion of the white part of the eye in relation to the iris, so that I can make sure that everything is the correct size. Okay, also you'll notice that around this is quite curved on the outside corner of the eye. On the inside corner of the eye, so this is the corner of the eye closest to your nose, you'll notice that it kind of narrows to a point a bit more, and that you've got this little fleshy bit in the corner. Okay, so this is where your tear duct is actually, that's where your tears come from, but these little bits are part of the muscles that allow your eye to move around, so they're really important. Actually, I need to bring that much further down here, I think. So you can see, wasn't happy with that, so I've changed it. Okay, don't leave things. If you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, that doesn't quite look right, you may need to make sure that you change it. That's one of the most important skills in art. Okay, so I'm just going to bring that back going to draw in these little fleshy bits in the corner. Now I can just do a bit of rubbing out. You'll notice I haven't done any rubbing out until this point. And that's because sometimes if you rub something out, you're much more likely to make the same mistake again. Okay, but now I'm fairly happy with most of the shapes I've got. Just going to go over to make sure you can see it really well. Make sure that I've drawn those in clearly. Okay, next thing to draw in is the eyelids. There's actually two eyelids, top eyelid here, bottom eyelid here. This one's really obvious because it's got a dark crease. This one's just got a bit of a shadow. But I'm still going to just very gently sketch in where that is because it will help me later on when I add some tone to this. Okay, then I'm going to draw in the crease of the top eyelid. It's quite narrow here. It's much wider in the middle, and then it carries on, gets a little bit closer to the edge of the eye around here. Okay, so pretty happy with that. Again, make sure you spend a bit of time correcting it until you're happy. Okay, next detail to include is the reflection in the eye, and that's really important because it shows us that the eye is actually wet because it's shiny. Okay, and that's part of what brings your eye to life, really. Now, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but get it as accurate as you can. So I now have the main shape of the eye. I've got the tear duct corner of the eye, I've got the iris, I've got the pupil, I've got the reflection, I've got the top eyelid, and I've got the bottom eyelid. Okay, last thing I need to do is, if you look really closely, you can see here where the eyelid touches the eye, and then you can see another line here, which is where the eyelashes grow from. So it's really useful to just sketch in the second line here, and that'll be, you'll use that later on when we start adding eyelashes. You'll notice I'm not adding any eyelashes at the moment, and that's deliberate because I don't want to add eyelashes until right at the end after I've added all of my tone. Okay, so I'd like you to draw the eye out, get to this stage where you've included all of this detail, okay? Then we're going to stop and we're going to move on to doing some tonal exercises for the rest of this lesson. Okay, see you in a bit. So you should all have finished drawing the main outline and the details onto your eye. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have spend some time practicing tones. Okay, so we're going to do this exercise first to create what we call a tonal scale, where we've got a whole range of tones from light all the way through to dark. Okay, after we've done that, we're going to practice graduating tone, so fading tone, to create two exercises that look like this. So first thing you're going to need to do is draw out a long box and divide it up into 7. Okay, you can use a ruler if you want to, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Mine certainly isn't. Okay, then we're going to recreate what you see on your sheet. Okay, so at this end, I'm going to make it really light. At this end, it's going to be dark as we can get it. And I'm just going to give you some tips for how to achieve that. So we start at this end. I'm going to leave that first box blank because that's going to be the brightest tone, okay, the lightest part, so we just need to leave that white. The next part needs to be a really, really, really pale grey. So, good tip, you'll notice that I've got a reasonably sharp pencil. I'm going to use my pencil on the side as flat as I can get it to the paper, and you'll notice I'm holding it almost at the end. That will help me not to press too hard. So, there are two ways to add tone really. First of all, you can layer tone, okay, and that gives you a bit more control as you're working. And secondly, you can press lightly or you can press much harder to get darker tones. If you press really gently or lightly, then you get lighter tones. If you press harder, you'll get darker tones. But the most useful for the first tones here, where you need a bit more control, is to layer it really. So we're using the pencil on the side, and I am really going very, very gently. Okay, so you can see that I'm moving the pencil from side to side in a controlled way, but I'm also moving it up and down as I'm doing it. Try and make sure that you fill your box box filled. And that's probably enough for that first one. Move on to the second one. This one needs to be a little bit darker. Again, just using the side of my pencil. Not really pressing any harder. This time I'm going to go back over it a few times. So I'm layering the tone. I'm creating different layers, and that will make it just a little bit darker each time. Okay, I think that's probably enough for that one. You can spend a bit longer tidying up, making sure there's no gaps around the edge. Next one, same technique, still using the pencil on the side. Still going from side to side and moving my pencil this way as well. Okay, but this time I'm going to go back over it a few times. Now I am actually pressing a little bit harder this time as well, as I go back over it. So you can see that each time I do another layer, it just makes it that little bit darker.
Yes, I am getting closer.
Okay, next one. So now I'm actually going to hold my pencil a little bit further down because that will allow me to press a bit harder. I've still got my pencil reasonably flat, but this is, you can see immediately, allowing me to press a bit harder as I do this. Okay, still go over it a few times. Okay, so I would go back and fill in the gaps, but I'm not going to waste your time. Okay, you make sure you do that. Okay, next one. Now this is where we can start to use the point of our pencil a little bit more. So hold your pencil a little bit more upright. Okay, and that will immediately allow you to press a bit harder. Okay, so you can see immediately that's just one layer. Go back over it again. So you should be checking each time that it's just a bit darker than the box before. I think that's probably fine. Now, for the last one, you're going to use the point of your pencil and you're going to press really quite hard. This needs to be as dark as you can get it. You may even find you need to sharpen your pencil for this. The sharper the pencil, the easier it is to get a darker tone. So you might need to go over it a few times. I'm just going to quickly do this. Make sure you do yours nice and neatly like my first one. Okay, so once you've done that last one, you then need to look back at them and then see if there's any that you need to change. So I think this one actually could do with being just a little bit darker. Yeah, let me go back over that one. Okay, and then I think that actually change quite well between the different tones. So I want you to do that exercise first, so that will allow you to really practice, first of all, layering your tone, and also how hard the pressure you're applying, how hard you press with your pencil, whether you're pressing lightly or harder to get different tones. I want you to practice that exercise first of all. So, you should by now have finished creating your tonal scale. What we're going to do now is we're going to have practice at graduating tone. So you can see these are my two examples I've done here. And you can see the first one is just going to be a square where on one edge it's darker, then it fades to light in the middle, and then it fades back to dark at the other edge. Okay. The other one is another square, but this time it has a circle in the middle. The square, the background of it, fades from dark to light on that way. The circle fades from dark to light in the other direction. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're looking at the example on your sheet and trying to copy what you see. So, down here I have copied out, I've drawn out a square. Doesn't have to be perfect, this, although it is quite good practice for you, drawing squares and circles. Okay, now I'm going to start again using the side of my pencil, and I'm going to start at the edge. Okay, so for this, it's probably best to use the side of your pencil and layer your tones, because what you really want to be using here is a lot of control. So remember, in the middle it will be completely blank, and then you're actually going to be including all the tones that you did on your tonal scale, but this time with fading. So clearly towards the edge here I need to layer the tone a lot more. And as I'm pulling my pencil up this way, I'm still using quite small movements, going from side to side with my pencil, but then as I'm moving this way, I'm actually pressing more and more gently. So I start off pressing reasonably hard, and as I pull it towards the middle, I'm pressing more and more until I'm barely touching the paper actually. So we're trying to get it so it fades really smoothly, and this is a really useful skill for you to practice, because when we come to adding tone to your eye that you've drawn, you're going to need to know how to graduate your tone. So now you can see that I'm using the tip of my pencil. I'm just going over this section to make it a bit darker. I might leave it there for now, but I might come back to it a little bit later on. Now, actually here I'm probably just get a bit. So remember, with drawing, it is a constant series of checking what you're doing, making sure that what you're doing looks right, and then if it doesn't look right, you make changes, you don't leave it. So on this side now, I'm going to start from here. So here I'm going to need to be pressing really gently. Go towards the edge and just press a bit hard. You can go in both directions as long as you really think about what the pressure should be, whether you should be pressing harder or softer. Okay, and then remember, when you want to get some dark tones, switch to using the point of your pencil. Okay, so I'm going to let you get on with that one, and then in a moment I'll show you how to do the other one with the circle. So now I'm going to have a go at doing the circle. So I'm going to start with the square. Okay, and this is really the same technique that you've been practicing, but you're going to have to work around a shape. So it requires you to work a little bit more precisely than you were for the square. So as you start to move around the edge of the circle, you're going to need to make very small movements. Make sure you're stopping at the edge of the circle. So, I've mostly done the circle now, the square, sorry. Now I'm going to start working on the circle. So on this time, this side of the circle needs to be really dark, and the other side needs to be really, really light. So I'm going to start on the light side, gently. And as I draw my pencil back towards the dark side, I'm just going to press a bit harder. So you can see that I have virtually finished doing the circle on the square now, and what's interesting is that there's no line. You can't see an outline here. The only reason you see that edge is because this bit is really dark and that bit is really light, and it creates contrast, and that contrast shows you the edge, and that's a really useful skill in drawing, because what you often don't want to see is lots and lots of outlines. So this is partly why we use tone, is to make objects look 3D. So you can see that this looks fairly 3D now, and the shapes that you drew last week look 3D. So these are the skills that we're going to be using and adding to your eye drawing to make your eye look 3D.